Okay, I'm excited, but God, I have no idea where to start. Help me, because it really is a huge subject. There's a lot in the Bible about the Tabernacle of Moses and the Tabernacle of David. There's a lot of rabbit trails you could go down. There's a lot surrounding it. And so he gave me a focus. And so I'm just praying that I can keep to that focus and really help express what it is and what does the rebuilding or the restoration of David's tabernacle mean, well enough that y'all will leave with an understanding, mainly a better understanding of what are the reasons that we do this. Why do we do extended worship? Why do we choose to sit in peace at Jesus? Like, what is productive in that? Because a lot of the church wants to know, well, what are you actually doing? A lot, as it turns out. Okay. So, Amos 9:11 is where we usually start when we talk about the tabernacle. It says, "On that day I will raise up the tabernacle of David, which has fallen down, and repair its damages. I will raise up its ruins and rebuild it as in the days of old." So this is one of really only two places that the actual phrase tabernacle of David is mentioned in the Bible. And just a little background on what Amos is talking about. So Amos was a prophet about 250 years after David's kingdom. And at the time of Amos, the kingdom was divided into two nations. It had been torn into. The first 8 chapters, he's prophesying judgment, because they had rejected God, they had walked away from God. So in this verse, he's kind of like dressing down the nation of Israel, calling them a sukkah, basically a tent, a shanty, and saying you're nothing but a tent, but I'm going to rebuild the tent of David. And so he signified that there's a need to return to a certain pattern that existed in David's time. Okay. So to understand the tabernacle of David, you need to know a couple things about the tabernacle of Moses. The tabernacle of Moses was basically the first time that God said, okay, I brought you out of Egypt, and I want to be your guide, and I want to commune with you and dwell with you as the living God in your midst. And so he gave them very specific and very long instructions, which you can read in Exodus, especially the 20s, and gave them instructions on the exact measurements and how this was to be built. But it was a mobile tabernacle. It was a tent. It was a very, very fancy tent, but it was a tent. The tabernacle of Moses had an outer portion and then the holy place right in front of where the ark went, and then it had a big, heavy curtain, and then it had the Holy of Holies behind that curtain. Behind the curtain was the Ark of the Covenant, which was basically a big vessel. And the word actually is it's the same as like even a sarcophagus. And then on top of that ark, they had put, just as God very specifically described, a lid that had, the whole thing is acacia wood overlaid with gold. And so the lid is this flat lid that fits on top, and it has 2 cherubim with their wings outstretched, and they're gazing down at the middle of the mercy seat, it is called, the top of the ark. On the mercy seat between those cherubim is where the presence of God would literally come and dwell and hover. Now, in Moses' time, only the high priest, one day a year on the Day of Atonement, could go into that Holy of Holies, and he had to be very, very prepared. He would bathe with a cleansing bath, a mikvah. He would, there was all kinds of preparation. We don't have time to get into. But he would they would put bells around his ankle and a rope, so that if he fell dead in the presence of God, they could drag him out without killing anybody else. Okay? So it was a big deal to go before the presence of the Lord. So, skipping forward to David's time, in the meantime, what had happened to the ark is that in 1 Samuel 6 and 7, the ark had actually been, the Philistines had won a battle against the Israelites, and the Philistines had taken the ark. So they plundered the ark, and then everywhere they tried to put it, whatever camp they tried to put it in, boils and sickness would break out and people would die. And so they were like, okay, I don't think we want this thing anymore. And they stuck it on a cart and sent it back to Israel. Well, the Israelites at the time kind of viewed it with fear and mystery. And so they said, hey, Abinadab, how about you just kind of keep this hidden in your house, and we'll just kind of pretend it's not there. So that's what they did. So when the nation of Israel, I think it's important to note, when they let the ark go and no longer valued the presence of God in their midst, they had already rejected God. So by the time we get to 1 Samuel 8, when the nation of Israel asks Samuel, who's judge at the time, for a king, they said, we want a king like all the other nations have. And Samuel is distressed, and he goes to the Lord and he says, they want a king. And God says, okay, don't be upset. They've rejected me, not you, knowing that they had already put his presence out of their midst. But he allows them to make that choice, and he warns them, but he lets them do it. And King Saul is the result of that. So King Saul, who, among many things, suffered greatly from the sin of pride and became demonized, throws the kingdom into complete chaos. And basically is just obsessed with killing David and, staying king and all of these things. Meanwhile, David has been anointed as the next king. So in 2 Samuel 6, when Saul finally dies, David comes in and becomes king. So here's where it gets wild. So if you have your Bible, turn to Psalm 24. So at the time, it would have been normal for a king to become king, and then they hoist him up on a throne, and they carry him on their shoulders, and they do this big, progression into the city, celebrating the new king and honoring the new king. Well, David puts a twist on it. So his first action as king is, we need the presence of God back. And so he goes and gets the ark from the, guy's house where it's currently resting, and tries to bring it back to Israel. Fails the first time because they didn't follow the instructions. And then the second time is successful in having the priests carry it and bring it back. So if you can imagine the scene, David does something very odd. Instead of him being dressed in regal, amazing clothes, up on a throne, carried into Jerusalem, he has the ark carried into Jerusalem, and he instead puts on the garments of a priest, linen garments, poor garments, But the priest's only inheritance was the presence of the Lord. Okay? So he puts on those garments and dances like a crazy person as they make the progression into town. And David has written this, that we now call Psalm 24, as the song that he wants sung as they bring the ark back into Jerusalem. The earth is the Lord's and all it contains, the world and those who dwell in it. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Who may ascend into the hill of the Lord? And who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to falsehood and has not sworn deceitfully. He shall receive a blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is the generation of those who seek him, who seek your face, even Jacob. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. So you can just imagine David in his priestly garments, and he's saying, who is the king? It's not me, it's God. Who's the true king? It's God. And he's dancing in worship. As they're bringing the ark in, which is the throne of God, and they're bringing it up Mount Zion. So he's been very careful this time to do it right. And so every 6 steps, they literally stop and they sacrifice a calf and a bull. Every 6 steps up Mount Zion. So we don't know, but it's very likely that the priests carrying the ark are walking through blood on their way up the mountain. And then as soon as they get to the top, David puts the ark in a tent without a curtain, so that all of Israel can actually see the presence of God hovering at the top of Mount Zion, which is crazy. We still don't really know why no one died, but what we believe is that it was because of David's heart, because he was placing God as the true King of Israel, and he was desiring that the presence of God would come and dwell and commune with them, which is what God wanted all along. That was the original design in the Garden of Eden, was that he would dwell with us and there'd be no separation. Also, when he got the ark into the tent, he instituted 24/7 worship. So he literally hired and paid singers, musicians, all prophetic scribes, and gatekeepers. And what Scripture tells us is that there were about 4,288 singers and musicians, and that there were another 4,000 gatekeepers, which basically are intercessors. So it is because of those scribes that we have all of the songs. And we know that David must have come in and worshipped himself prophetically in the temple, because it was the scribes that were writing down these psalms, and there's so many that were written by him. So, I'm not really a keep to my notes kind of person, but all right. So David has hired all of these people to make continual sacrifices of praise, which is one of the reasons that possibly is why he was able to, legally get by with having no curtain, because there was a continual sacrifice of praise, a continual communing with God going on in the nation of Israel all the time. So if you can imagine going about your business in Israel, and you're hearing the songs all the time being sung. You're hearing the name of the Lord being lifted high. You're hearing who the true King is all the time. So it resulted in a generation that first Israel was victorious in every battle, And then they had an entire generation who knew no war. It was and led to the richest, most abundant time in Israel's history. The other interesting thing about the tabernacle is that the 24/7 went on for 33 years, which was exactly the lifespan of Jesus. So we can see that the tabernacle pointed toward Jesus in every single way. I'm God. I want to dwell in the midst of you. I want to be with you. And when Jesus came, he fulfilled everything that was meant in the Garden of Eden, everything that the tabernacle was meant as a preview of. That he would dwell with us, that there would be abundance, that there would be strength, that there would be joy, that there would be freedom, that there would be unity. There was great unity in Israel among the tribes and the nation as a whole. Let's see. So it was also an amazing picture of God's grace, that they could put the presence of God in the midst of them, and they could have no curtain, and they could have free access to the presence of God. And even though the law was that there needed to be a curtain, their sacrifice of praise continually going, continually covering their sin, continually transforming their hearts, continually making them more like him. And we see that Jesus eventually, after David's kingdom has passed away, and there's a curtain again, and there's, the normal legal tabernacle, we see Jesus at his death ripping the curtain from top to bottom. Again, reopening that free and complete access to God. So just imagine going about your day and hearing these songs continually sung, and we know from the songs that have been recorded for us that there were songs sung about Jesus 1,000 years before he came. So they're prophesying and declaring and preparing the way for Jesus, even at the time of David. So let's talk about just today. What does it look like today? And what kind of things happen when we today build him a throne in our midst? So keeping in mind that the ark was the throne of God, where do you think the throne of God is now? Yeah, you got it. I heard it a few times. So what used to be only in the Holy of Holies is now in us. If you turn to Hebrews 4:14 through 16. Does somebody want to read that out loud? Okay, great. Thank you.
Seeing then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need.
Okay, so the one throne of God exists in heaven still, which we now have free access to, but also, did somebody get 1 Corinthians 3, 16 and 17? Anybody got it?
Okay, do you need the mic?
No. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you? If any man destroy the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy, which ye are.
So how amazing is it that he has made us the holy of holies, where once it was feared and only one person after much preparation could go in. He literally put that inside of us and then made a throne in us and came to dwell there. So, what does this begin to look like today? At the end of the 1970s, we had about 5 known houses of prayer on the planet. Today, we know for sure of 10,000, and because there are so many underground, we think there are probably up to 20,000. And that's just houses of prayer. That's not even burn furnaces and all that kind of. Okay, so we have seen an incredible, explosive, exponential growth of this heart of wanting to dwell with God. I already explained to you how the burn began. And you can see the rapid growth of that too, from 5 furnaces in 2004 to, 250 to 300, somewhere in there. And then Awaken the Dawn. Awaken the Dawn started in 2017 on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. They had a huge turnout. Thousands and thousands of people. I wrote down close to 50,000 people, 1,600 worship teams from all 50 states, offered up 2,850 combined hours of worship and prayer in 58 tents around the clock for 3 days. It was also streamed live on Facebook by about 4 million people. So we can see that the name of the Lord and His fame and His worth is literally going viral. It is literally spreading across the earth. And it's so significant that we have a tent now going through 24/7, 365 at David's tent in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall. David's tent began in 2012. On September 11th, 2015, they started going 24/7, 365. So what happened was, they wanted to pitch this tent. They talked to whoever they have to get permission from. It's like the Parks and Wildlife or something like that in D.C. And so they got permission to do this, I think the first one was like, I can't remember if it was 50 hours. I think it was 50 hours. And then the next year, they said, let's go longer. And then the next year, the Parks Department approached them and said, hey, why don't you go longer? And they were like, okay. And so literally they now have a permanent place on the National Mall in D.C., 24/7, 365 since September 11th of 2015. And also a significant date. So we're seeing this crazy growth, but we're not only seeing crazy growth, we're seeing unprecedented unity between ministries. We're seeing ministries begin to marry each other because the covenant is the same. We want God. We want Him in our country. We want Him in our region. We want Him in our state. We want Him in our home. We want Him in our family. We want Him in our business. We want there to be no separation anymore. So we're seeing ministries like Burn, Awaken the Dawn, David's Tent really come together and intentionally link arms and begin to work with each other, support each other. And we're already, this is just happening, we're already doing so much more than we could have if we had, maintained separation between the ministries. So we see that it repeatedly is demonstrated in Scripture that the measure of honor that's given to the presence of God directly affects the measure of prosperity in a nation, or a region, or a family, or a business, or a school. Tons of examples of that. But Moses, Gideon, Josiah, every time they tore down idols and refocused Israel on the presence of the Lord, they started winning all the battles. This justice was seen in the land. Joy, prosperity, abundance, all of these things. Unity between the tribes, no infighting. And boy, do we need some unity nowadays, right? So we see so much fruit coming out of just that one thing of making the presence of Jesus central and bringing it front and center. So could somebody look up Acts 15, 16, and 17? And when you get it, just hold on. Okay, just hold on to it for a minute. And I just wanna go through a few more things. Like, what else happens when we build Him a throne? So we already talked about we get access to God. What about intimacy with God? When the pursuit of His presence in all of your life is central to everything, like, I always relate everything to Ireland, but the Celtic Christians, the way that they lived their life was so different from the way that we do. When they washed dishes, they had a prayer about cleansing and about the presence of God and thankfulness for their food. When they milked the cow, they had a prayer. When they churned butter, they had a prayer. When they stoked the fire, they had a prayer. They were living and breathing prayer and song all day long, and all those mundane things became the breath of God. And it's just something that we can aspire to return to. Because that's exactly what was happening in Israel during the time of David. Is they were living, eating, sleeping, breathing with songs to the Lord going up night and day. How about agreement with God? Agreement with God that produces partnership with Him. In David's temple, there are several different types of specific worship and agreement that are mentioned. Praise. And these I stole from David Fritsch because they're so good. But he says, praise is agreeing with God's nature. Thanksgiving, agreeing with what God has done. Worship, agreeing with God's desire to commune with man. The prophetic, agreeing with what God is going to do. And intercession, agreeing with God's will. You want me to repeat those?
Yes.
So praise, agreeing with God's nature. Thanksgiving, agreeing with what God has done. Worship, agreeing with God's desire to commune with man. Prophetic, agreeing with what God is going to do. And intercession, agreeing with God's will. So in all this agreement with God, we have an amazing fringe benefit. When we're all agreeing with God, we're all agreeing with each other. Now, we may not agree on everything, but we have agreement one to another because we're all focused on Him and we're all prioritizing Him. And all of these piddly things like what color is the church carpet,
Right.
we don't care anymore. And the things that we disagree on that could break relationship, it no longer breaks relationship because we're able to realize the value of one another and the importance of staying in that relationship and the importance of staying linked together. So Jesus in John 17, which is just one of my favorite chapters, because where else do we get to see so clearly everything that's in Jesus' heart right before He gave His life for us? One of the things that He says is, "The glory which you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one, just as we are one. I and them, and you and me, that they may be perfected in unity, so that," very important, "so that the world may know that you sent me and loved them even as you have loved me." So what is one essential ingredient that we need in order for the world to know Jesus? Unity. It's like supercharging our witness. Because, look around you in the world, how much unity do you see? So when you see true unity, it blows people away. Because it's something authentic, it's something that can't be denied. When, wow, these people that are so different, or have such different backgrounds, or such different, ways of doing things, wow, they're so united in purpose and in love of this man Jesus. So let's go to, you had Acts, right? 15, 16, and 17.
You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatever you ask the Father in my name, He may give you. These things I command you, that you love one another.
We've got 15, 16, and 17.
Oh, oops, I'm sorry. That was John. Good word.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that fits so well.
All right, Acts 15, 16, and 17. All right, I'm checking myself. All right, after this I will return and will will rebuild the tabernacle of David, which has fallen down. I will rebuild its ruins. I will set it up, so that the rest of mankind may seek the Lord. Even all the Gentiles who are called by my name, says the Lord, who does all these things.
So this is James stands up and he prophesies this, but he's also quoting Amos 9:11. And what does he say? So that all men might seek me. So right there we have a huge clue to understanding that the tabernacle of David is productive, is fruitful, that our time spent in worship, it's not just for us. It's not just sitting there doing nothing, right? We don't have to have 100 tasks for there to be fruit that comes out of that time. Every ministry that I described to you was birthed out of that place. And look at the growth. Look at the exponential, explosive growth. Look at the unity that's being produced. The fruit of missions arms. The Burn now has a missions arm. We're now adopting refugees. I mean, there's, things keep being added because we're keeping that one thing the one thing. And that's what happens with every church, every school, every ministry, every business, every nation, every home that centralizes and prioritizes the presence of God. If you go back to Amos 9:11, we have another clue here that it's not only so that the world may seek him, but another thing that happens when David's tent is restored. It says, "In that day I will raise up the fallen booth of David and wall up its breaches. I will also raise up its ruins and rebuild it as in the days of old, that they may possess the remnant of Edom, and all the nations who are called by my name, declares the Lord who does this." Okay, so possessing nations. If your heart is to possess nations and see hearts won to Jesus, then you need a tabernacle of David. And then it says, "Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when the plowman will overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him who sows seed, when the mountains will drip sweet wine, and all the hills will be dissolved." So what is that a picture of? The hills are dissolved. It makes the way straight. The plowman overtakes the reaper. It's happening so fast they can barely plant before they're reaping a harvest. So what it is it's unprecedented, unbelievable multiplication in the harvest. And this is what I'm always wanting those with an evangelist gift to understand. Worship fuels missions. My husband said on the way here this morning, this is how heaven evangelizes. And it is, because the more time we spend in his presence, the more time we spend gazing on him, the more we start to look like him. And just like Moses coming out from his presence and he has this glow. People know when you have been in his presence. And what do people want? What does this generation want more than anything? They want real. They want authentic. Don't give me any of the car salesman stuff. Don't try to push things down my throat. Don't try to teach me and just tell me information. Show me. Show me what's real. And I will run to it. That is this generation. So when we show them how we are in love with this Jesus, because he's worthy of our entire lives, they can't help it. They can't help but run to him. several years ago, we were at well, we call them Burn Global Summits, but when we started, there were like 30 of us, so it was like a really epic name for this really small gathering. It was still an epic gathering, but I think, we had gotten to the point where there were like 75 of us, at the Global Summit, and we had just had this weekend of amazing, worship and prophesying over one another, and praying for one another, and taking communion together, and Julie Meyer was leading worship, and she's so prophetic, and I was dancing in the back of the room, and then I had, just this feeling of weight, and I was on my knees, and I saw a couple of visions, but one was, we were in heaven, and everywhere we moved, music was coming out of us. And we were dancing around the Lord, and you could see like the sound waves of music coming out of us and swirling all around. And I heard the Lord say, in heaven, you are the music. And I was just wrecked. Just wrecked. And so if we can continue to get in His presence as often and as long as we possibly can, then those times when we're coming out into the world, we have so much more overflowing out of us. And I believe in the Spirit that when we're sitting and we're singing songs to the Lord and we're singing the songs that He's singing over us, when we go out into the world, in the Spirit, there is music coming out of us, emanating from our spirits. And people they can't hear it, they can't see it, but there's something. There's something real. And I think, I actually shared this story here, but I'll just share it again kind of in a nutshell. I don't know if it was our first burn, might have been like our second or third, but it was one of our very first burns. We're in this youth room, and it was, I always say it was like where the musical instruments went to die. Like, when they couldn't really be used on stage anymore because there was something wrong with them, like they sent them in the youth room, which I thought was really sad. But we at least had amps and stuff. But I was playing this piano that had to be from like 1898 or something. It was like, the keys were like half broken. It was like the further down you got, the more out of tune it got, like playing up here. But man, we were going for it, and we were just worshiping, and I just had this moment, this surreal experience. I'm like pounding on these old keys, and I don't even remember what we were singing. But I heard the Lord say, this is what warfare sounds like in my kingdom. And I thought, but it's so easy. Like, it's so fun. And he was like, yep. And I could see in the Spirit, like, the sound going out from that place, and it was not a nice sound overall, guys. It was sad. But the sound, because it was so from our hearts and it was so for Him, I could see it going out into the region, way beyond where anybody could hear it, and breaking walls down and clearing obstacles. And bringing freedom. And it was just this moment of perspective shift where I was like, oh, okay, well, I can do this kind of warfare all the time. So when we are doing that, when we are in His presence and we're singing the songs He's singing and we're declaring them over our region, over our homes, over wherever, we're warriors. And we are conducting warfare of the highest order in the Spirit. Angels are coming and strengthened to fight because of the songs we're singing. We become a governmental body on the earth to advance the kingdom of God further and further and further, to extend. He's already won it all back. He already took the deed back. But right now, He's waiting for us to enforce it. Right now, Satan thinks he's the king here. He's not. He never was. He has no legal right anymore. It's up to us to extend the kingdom and take that back. Say, no, this was never yours. This is the true king's property. This is the true king's territory. And we're taking it back. So, just to close, when I didn't get a lot of direction, and maybe because He wanted me to be like really dependent on Him, and I definitely was for this teaching. But when I kept asking the same question, just as I was, when I started praying about it and really thinking about, wow, what part do I even share? How do I even get it across with so little time? And I just kept saying, but what does this group of people need to know? What do you want to tell this group of people about the Tabernacle of David? And the only thing that I got back from him was, it's all about building a throne. It's all about building a throne. We create a space for Him to come and dwell in our midst so we can gaze on Him and we can become more like Him. And so He can rule and reign and teach us to rule and reign. And aside from all that, just so that we can be with Him. And just so He can be with us. Because that's what the whole thing was about in the first place. It's what it's always been about for Him. So God, thank you. Thank you. You did all the work. You did all the work, and you left the fun part for us. You left the joyful part for us. You took all the junk on your shoulders so that we could joyfully carry just your presence. So we could joyfully carry who you are to a world that is desperate for the real King.